Hey there, and welcome back to the Mirror Project. We're your hosts, Alexandra,
And Christine.
and we're thrilled to have you with us today. We're so excited to kick off the new season's first topic, and what better way to start than with some real talk about New Year's progress, pressure, and everything else in between. This episode is all about that familiar feeling so many of us get around December and January, the pressure to reinvent ourselves. You know the drill. Lose weight, hit your goals hard, and be a brand new you. But let's be honest, does that really set us up for success? Or does it just leave us feeling overwhelmed and down on ourselves? Spoiler, we've definitely been there, and we're betting some of you have too. In this episode, we'll dive into a quote that sparks debate on how we feel about self progress and the whole New Year clockwork. Then we'll get personal, reflecting on our goals from 2024 and the lessons we've learned, and what we're setting our sights on for 2025. Spoiler alert, there's no magical reinvention here, just two friends embracing the messy, beautiful work in progress journey as we touch base during the second month of the year. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's start the new year with some honest, heartfelt conversations. Here's to celebrating growth at your own pace. Before we delve into today's riveting topic, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, or follow button on your favorite listening platform. Take a moment to do it now before it slips your mind. Trust us, we're not getting started without you. Let's make this journey together. Okay, so what sort of brought up this conversation between us was Instagram reel of Alex Hermosi, I hope I'm saying that correctly, saying, "You don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. Outwork your self doubt." So, Christine, I know when we were briefly talking about this episode, it certainly
Mhm.
started an interesting conversation for us. What are your thoughts on that quote? Anything about it?
I think when I first, when we were first working on the outline for the episode and having you read that out, I was like, yes, but whoa. I think just because I know Alex, I've gotten to know him a bit more. My boss is a fan of his, and I've consumed some of his content, and he's just like a very aggressive, energetic personality. Like he is intense. And I think there's a time and place for that, for sure. And I think the heart of what this message is I agree with it. You know, we when we first started, I think when we our first topic we ever did for the podcast was talking about affirmations and manifesting and those different things. And yes, I agree. Shouting in the mirror isn't going to get you anywhere, but I think it's a good first step. But you also got to put in the work. So, to the point of having that stack of undeniable proof will help you when self doubt creeps in. So, I think I agree with the sentiment, but maybe not exactly with how he always attacks things, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think Alex was like when we were talking about this, she was like, "Where are you going, Christina? Do you like this or don't you?" The answer is I do. I just think I would approach things differently than say an Alex Hermosi. But what
So,
about you, Alex?
I actually don't really know much about Alex Hermosi. I think I've seen a few things pop up on Instagram where
Mm-hmm.
he's saying something, and I think it's other accounts like sharing snippets and stuff. And what I've seen of him, I don't necessarily disagree with, but I can definitely see what you're saying about the hard hitting, in your face, goal oriented, hit it like nobody's business, drive kind of personality. And
Mm-hmm.
I think part of me gets that. I think part of me connects with that, like particularly the perfectionist part of me is like that kind of energy makes sense, even though outwardly I'm not really that kind of person, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly an ambition I can be. But based on the work that I know we'll talk about in a little bit from 2024, for me, a softer approach works for reaching my goals. But what he's saying specifically in this quote, "You don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror." I agree with. And I think when we talked about the affirmations last year, oh gosh, I gotta
Mm-hmm.
go back in the mental, library and, filing cabinets of what we actually said. I agree with that in some sense. You can't hmm, I don't believe it's possible to shout affirmations you don't believe in at yourself in the mirror, or even say them. You don't even have to shout them, but to stand in front of a mirror and say, trying to think of one. I love myself. I think my body is great. If you're somebody who has struggled with body dysmorphia, or you currently can't stand your body and it just feels so false to say that,
Mm-hmm.
I do think adjusting what you say as your affirmation or your mantra of like, I love that my body works today. I love that it carries me places. I
Mm-hmm.
love that it allows me to do something, maybe more honest and truthful. And as you said, help you take those action steps to reach a place where you could say, look in the mirror and say, I love myself. Or, I am rich. What
Mm-hmm.
does that mean? So I think if an affirmation feels too far out of reach, false, just saying it in a mirror is not going to bring it about.
Right.
But if you scale it to somewhere where you feel like this is something I can genuinely say to myself and believe, and this is how I'm showing up for whatever that affirmation is, you will begin to build that stack of proof. And I'm happy to share an example as we get into it a little bit later of how I've built that proof for myself over the past year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to outwork your self
Yeah.
doubt. And I think that takes a lot of work and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time to get to a place where you're like, I hear that voice of self doubt, and I'm just saying, hey, I recognize that you're there. It's not changing what I'm
Right.
doing. I'm going to keep going. It makes me think of when you were reading it, I was like shouting at the mirror and like hoping something will happen. Made me think of an interesting sketch I'd seen somewhere, mostly about like pagan spiritualism and like Christianity. It was
Mm-hmm.
somebody who's particularly Christian was like sitting on the ground, like praying, "Oh, let the ground grow." And it was like maybe somebody who's more metaphysically like pagan oriented, and it was like, "Yes, I'm. Please let the grass grow as I'm, watering the plant."
Watering it.
It's like you can do those affirmations and you can say and you can definitely put your intention and energy into it, but also matching that with action. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
where a lot of amazing generative power comes from versus just
For
saying,
sure.
"Oh, I hope it happens."
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
You have to put action to those words, right? Because otherwise they're just words.
mhm.
And I think a big thing for me, and what was really striking a chord with me the other day when we were first talking about this, was that idea of embracing the fact you are trying,
Mhm.
because even a little step forward, no matter how big or small, matters. Even if you don't step forward, you just stay in place. Like, I think when I first heard this and I was picturing him saying it, he's such like a big personality where he's constantly driving and going and going and going. And I respect that.
That sounds
Give him a lot of
exhausting.
props. Exactly. That to me is like a disaster waiting to happen. So embracing the fact that I'm trying every day, I
And
think
you're
is
doing
huge.
something every
You're doing
day.
something, and that will keep adding to your stack of undeniable proof. It doesn't have to be something major. It could be that you washed your dishes that day. I don't know, but
And I think
um
staying at equilibrium is as
yeah.
much of a step forward, you
Mhm.
know? And weirdly, I think sometimes a step forward looks like a step backwards. I don't know if that makes sense,
Mhm.
but it
Maybe it might feel like a step backwards, but maybe it's like a sidestep, or like you're stepping onto a new path
mhm,
because maybe you don't know where it could lead, but it's moving you somewhere.
yeah. And
So,
I think it's a huge, like, people, you, me, we need to give ourselves props for trying and making
mm,
a small step, a big step, whatever step every day, because there's so many people who do just give up and stop trying. So the fact that you are still doing something, that's incredible and worth celebrating and worth, acknowledging that, not every day is going to look like whether it's like hitting a personal record in a workout or, showing up to a meeting and getting everything you want to negotiate for, like whatever it is.
yeah.
It's not, it seems to me unrealistic and unsustainable to expect that every single day. And not be tired or burnt out or exhausted,
Mm-hmm.
because then how can you enjoy what you've accomplished and done?
Right. Right. And I think like when when the new year comes around, it's I the image that came to my mind was like it's almost like clockwork, right? New Year starts and you're just getting inundated with all of this messaging about new year, new you, like get back in the gym or,
Mm-hmm.
set all of these goals for yourself for the year. And the pressures of that could almost like keep you from even wanting to start. So I think like making sure that you do embrace that you're trying and reflect on what you did last year because maybe and certainly in my case I didn't achieve all of my goals I had initially sat down and thought about and wrote down for myself for 2024, but I did achieve so much and there was stuff I didn't even think about that ended up
Mm-hmm.
happening that became accomplishments for myself. So I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed and sort of discouraged before it even starts, but
Mm-hmm.
surrounding yourself with like people who help you see how far you've come or even like allowing yourself to see it. I know it can be hard, but
Yeah, you're
yeah.
definitely a good mirror for me to help me see what I've certainly accomplished, and particularly in moments where I kind of spiral out, going, I haven't done enough, I haven't whatever
Mhm.
something. Yeah, it's quite an insidious, I think, pressure too around the new year. It's so much put on the start of a year, right? Like, oh, January 1st, whatever day of the week that falls on, it's going to be, this is it. This is when I'm going to be the new me. And it's like, okay, first of all, I'm
Right.
not sure really everyone, at least in my experience, I set goals and I've never really thought about the person I want to be. I just thought about outwardly what that would look like or be like, without really doing the work to be the person I wanted to be, let alone figure out who I wanted to be. So I think
Mm.
that's already one step. If you're in love and with the new year, new me kind of thing, without that anchor, it's very easy for those goals and resolutions to fall away. So I love that we're having this conversation in February, because it's a month and a half out, right? Well, almost the end of February, that we're kind of checking in on again, because like I think people do lose steam on New Year's resolutions, and then, halfway through the year, where are we at? So
Mhm.
what
Mhm.
what is realistic? As you said, you didn't accomplish everything. I don't think most people accomplish everything on their list, and if you do, whoa, amazing for you. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well done.
But it's not a negative if you don't
Mm.
accomplish everything. So I think this is a good start to a deep conversation. So we're already hitting one of our podcast goals that we've
Yes.
talked about last episode, of trying to get deeper.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Craving more of our company? Join the fun over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Mere Project Pod. Dive deeper into our world and engage with us on a whole new level. Don't miss out on the excitement.
So I think on that note, I'm gonna have Alexandra sort of talk with us, have her reflect a little bit on what her goals from 2024 were and how she feels about what she accomplished, and then we'll each do this exercise. It's not just going to be Alexandra, but then we'll also share our goals for this year. And yeah, why don't you start?
Okay. All right. So I know last year we did talk about somewhere our goals for 2024. I couldn't find my notes for that episode, so I'm kind of winging it. And Christine, if I'm missing something that you remember, please jump in. So a big one last year for me was education. And it was my last calendar year of my MBA. And I can say with all, you know, cheeriness and like, oh my gosh, I've accomplished a huge goal. I finished. I finished in 2024. So check. That one's
Woo!
off. I know I talked woo as I hit myself. I know I talked about it more in last episode, so I won't reiterate everything, but that was a huge undertaking and it
Yeah.
really was a push that last semester, and kind of in the energy that Christina described Alex Hormozy. I feel like that was the energy that I kind of lived in of, and it wasn't even about all of my life. It was really just about, my coursework of just like get through this thing, do it,
Mm,
show up, do it, at the expense of maybe a couple of my other goals. So I know a goal for me last year was like romantic romance and relationships. A lot of my romance and relationships were in the books that I read. Yeah, I didn't really jump back into dating. I don't know. Maybe I've gone out with a couple people like coffee dates. There was somebody I did talk to over the summer, which was a really good experience for me, kind of getting back into it and approaching dating in a different mindset than I had previously. So that was a really great, for lack of a better word, experiment. That was the word. He was a nice guy. I just ultimately did not see it going further. But it taught me a lot about how I want to have conversations with people, what I'm expecting. And then a really wonderful coworker at work kind of set me up with somebody who is in our work environment. I work on a college campus. And we had a conversation, and he gave me his number and I responded, and I had set up like, hey, I'd love to set up a time to get coffee, and like it was great to meet you kind of thing. Never heard back, and I was like, that is okay. I was like, little busy anyway, but I'm glad I tried. Like I didn't just, when my friend
yeah.
had said like, hey, I kind of want to tell, this person that you're single and da 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 da. I was like, I think my first reaction was to go, no, but like, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, why not? This friend knows me. Put myself out there in a way that's a
Sure.
little uncomfortable for me, but that's not so much with like, not so far out there that it was an immediate no. And I went, you know what? Hey, it's an opportunity. See what happens.
Exactly.
So didn't make it really far in there. But currently still single. So I think that's gonna come back up for 2025. But it was fun. I read a lot of romance books. hmm hmm That
Mm-hmm.
certainly that was fun. That was a great way to get my romance, fixings and
Sure.
hits. Anyways, moving on. I think another big goal for me in 2024 was my health. And much like the insidious pressure of New Year's resolutions, it was predominantly focused around weight loss. And I actually did lose a good amount of weight during the year. I think not the way I had originally thought it was going to happen in at the start of last year. I tend to have sometimes a 0 to 60 personality or thought patterns when I set goals for myself. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start it, and results are gonna show up, and it really looked different reflecting back on 2024 than how I thought it was. A lot of that work on losing weight started seeing a new practice for medical health, medical care, and approaching my health a little bit more holistically, like internally, looking at how trying to get my body more into natural rhythms,
Mm-hmm.
combination with alternative practices such as like Reiki and sound healing, obviously chiropractic care, which is not so much alternative, but not necessarily mainstream for most people's healthcare, and acupuncture, and a ton of work in therapy. I think no, last year I definitely did mention I thought I had an eating disorder when I was a teenager, and so kind of embarking back on a genuine concerted effort towards weight loss that would be permanent. I was concerned about slipping back into old patterns and habits that would
Mm.
ultimately be more detrimental to my health than helpful. And so I remember showing up in my therapist's office towards the end of 2023, early part of 2024, and said, I'm done. I'm sick of myself. I'm done. I've hit my rock bottom of me and myself and where I'm at. I'm over it. I'm gonna change. We're gonna do the work. So I even told her, I was like, do not let me run away from tough conversations. Do not let me run away or hide behind false surface answers. We're doing none of that. And
Mm.
what really came out of that was good, wonderful work on my relationship to food and exercise and approaching goals and think not just weight loss, but most things with a bit more softness and grace for myself, which has led to a much more balanced and sustained weight loss so far. So I think that was not the way I originally thought it was going to be. And it
Mm.
has taken a long time where I'm like, I see myself every day and I'm like, this isn't working, and I had some really low moments, which Christine was very kind enough to walk me through some of those and be there just as a supportive friend during some of them. But I had some nice recognition towards the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. A couple people saying like, wow, I really have noticed the work that you've done. And it kind of just gave me a little boost when I was feeling like maybe it wasn't really working to keep going
Right.
for 2025. So that was my reflection on 2024. Christine, do you want to reflect on your 2024 before we dive into what we're setting our sights on for 2025 or?
Sure. I
Okay.
just let me turn on a light. Hang on, because I'm realizing I'm just disappearing into the abyss. Hold on.
Guys, we're learning with the video thing, so bear with us.
That's better.
Hi.
Hi.
Let there be light.
Sorry for that brief interlude. I'm now not in darkness. Happy to reflect on my 2024. So, I said, last year was the first year in a long time I made a pretty purposeful effort to think about my goals for the year. And there were a lot that I did achieve, some I didn't, but I'm really happy that I'm not like beating myself up over that, because if there's one thing that I've learned is that there's no destination to this life journey we're on, so
Mhm.
you just got to keep trying. So I set a couple of different financial goals for myself last year. I would say I didn't necessarily do a whole lot, but I started the conversation and I started figuring out what I might want to do for myself. So I feel like that has set me up well for this year, because I'll actually do some of those things that I talked about, explored. I'm very lucky to have many people in my life who are more knowledgeable in this field than I am and are more than willing to sit down and talk me through. So, the idea around that was I wanted to save for my 30th birthday trip that we're going to go on, amongst other things like saving for the future and things like that. Additionally, some personal things that I had set for myself was travel, and I did that. I did a lot of
Mhm.
travel. I mentioned in last week's episode that I went down and visited Alexandra at the end of the year, which was a great way to end the year. But I actually started the year traveling as well. I was on a trip up to Newport, one of my favorite places in the world. My family and I love it so much. And who knows, we're maybe going to plan a trip with our moms
Mhm.
later, maybe sometime over the summer. So, though, what a way to start and end the year. But I also went on a family trip to Ireland. We were there for a week. I had never been before, and it was absolutely spectacular. I had so much fun. It's beautiful there, and it was a great introduction to the country, and there's still so much to see. So maybe we'll dive into that on a future episode. But we were in Dublin. I saw the Ring of Kerry. We went to Blarney Castle. Yeah, it was truly spectacular. Been one of my favorite trips that I've ever been on so far. And who knows, maybe we'll top it this year with our Europe excursion.
Will it top it or just be something that's also really great?
You never know. I mean, I think
Individually on their own, amazing experiences.
true. Let's not set ourselves up there. Let's not set the bar too high. I get what you're saying. I get where you're coming from. And went to the beach. I love the beach, like doing little trips, little excursions definitely help break up how crazy life can get and give you a moment to sort of take a breath and ground yourself. I There's something so sacred almost to me about the ocean and going down there, and it's such a grounding experience for myself. And I think there is something too, like seeing water in motion, like helps you on like on a level you might not even realize. But it's truly healing, and it's something that I value and purposely go out of my way to make sure I those moments. Another big accomplishment on my goals was to get my first tattoo. I did do that. That happened, I think, back in June, I want to say.
I want to say it's also perfectly on brand for who you are and the theme of your birthday.
I know, it's so funny how it all happened. So I kind of reached a point where like I just wanted to break the ice. And I've had been dreaming up these ideas in my head of different designs I want to do, which I still want to do. But it was almost like the anticipation was building too much around it, and I hadn't really thought of something that's just for me. A lot of like when I was thinking of different pieces I want to get done, they're always in honor of someone that's really important to me. But there was this event that was happening at a shop that I've been following pretty closely for over a year, and they do these different flash events, and they release their flash sheets, and there were a couple of designs on them that like I was like, oh, that'd be really cool. There doesn't always need to be like a major story behind a tattoo, as long as it means something to you or whatever the case may be.
I hope if you're going to put it on your body that it means something to you. But I get
So
what you mean. It doesn't have to be some like profound story. It just
right,
has to be something that
right.
you love.
Exactly. So there were two designs in particular that I was really leaning towards, but I wasn't sure on what the size was. So I had my friends, some of my best friends come with me, and I ended up getting a martini glass. If you listened to the last episode, you would have heard I turned 30 this year, or this past year, I should say, and I wanted to celebrate in a way that I've never really done before. I love planning a party, but I don't always like to be the center of attention. But for this occasion, I was like, you know what? Hell yeah, I want to do this for myself. And so I my party was themed a teeny bit older. I love a dirty martini. My nickname that my family calls me is Teeny. So it just was like a full circle moment, and I think like a beautiful little this tattoo is just like it's for me. Like just something cute and silly, but sort of embodies me in a way. So I was super ecstatic to have finally just done it, and now I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's do this next. Let's get these next ones going. So I hope to get another one this year, maybe even a third, who knows. But was really, really, really happy to have done that. And one thing I didn't get around to, and there were, several reasons why it just didn't work out. I have not yet adopted a furry friend of my own, but my life is not them. My parents have a beautiful dog. His name is Bo. He is now 2, which
Oh,
is
wow.
crazy. I know. And when I go down and visit with Alex and her family, there's Piper.
Mm-hmm.
She's just a love bug. So
Yeah.
and I have friends who have cats, and so I know where I can go to get my fix of a furry friend, and that's still a goal. I definitely want to adopt my own, but I just don't know quite yet how that's gonna play out.
Do you know
So
for sure if you want a cat or are you leaning definitely towards a dog?
I'm leaning towards a dog. I love cats, But if I ever want my mother to come visit me,
Right.
I
Right.
probably shouldn't have a cat because she's so allergic. And we had a cat when I was a kid. Her name was Emmy, and she was a sweetheart, but my poor mother was just
Oh,
suffering in silence for the several years we had her. So she was rehomed and I'm sure lived out her life with lots of love surrounding her. But yes, I've made the I know pretty well that I want to be a dog mom. So and I want to go the route of adopting, I think, first, because there's so many dogs out there who need love and a home to enjoy their life, and I hope to offer that. Who knows? Maybe I'll start by fostering first. I have to
mm,
figure out how I want to go about it because my building does allow for pets, but I don't know how much longer I'm going to stay there, and I don't know how moving would be with a pet. So lots of questions. I'm not I'm not
kind of,
saying no for this year, but I'm also not going to force it, if that
kind
makes
of
sense.
like if
A
the right
long-term goal.
dog, right
Yes.
time comes up,
Yes.
then definite
Exactly.
yes, but not going to make it happen if it's not lining up, kind of thing. Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
probably a better round all experience for you and the puppy or
I
older
think you're
dog. But
right.
I think all dogs, no matter how old they are,
They're
puppies.
all puppies. Yes, they are. And then I'll end on like Alex did with the romance. My love life. Let's see. I
You
did
made
step
strides last year. You
I
made
did
strides.
I did. I did. I got myself on a dating app. I went on some dates. I learned a lot, but I think ultimately like I want to find a way to have more fun with it. So, I think I've figured out what I'm looking for, which is big, which I know what I ultimately want, but for the time being, I don't necessarily want to settle down into a serious relationship right away. I want to meet new people, but I did make strides. I did put myself out there and definitely is on the goal list for 2025. So yeah, that's when I was reflecting on my year. I'm really happy with how far what I accomplished, how far I've come, and happy to roll over some of these goals for this coming year.
Nice. All right. So, Christine, do you want to lead in with your goals for 2025? Do you want me to kick off?
Sure. Let me stick with it here. So, as I mentioned, dating's still on the list for goals for this year. And I want to find a way to have fun with it, like I want to like sometimes I feel like I can end up taking myself too seriously, but I
I think,
strive to like I don't
as I say, I
know.
think
Go ahead.
that's kind of both of who we are, and that's probably why we were so much as friends. Is like we can be very serious, but you
Mm,
are a lot of fun. You bring a lot of levity. I think, but I know as we talked about in one of our episodes last year, Overthinkers Anonymous, it's very easy to get caught up in our own head.
yeah, for sure. So, yeah, when it comes to dating, still want to I think I just got to keep trying. And sometimes not always it's definitely not always going to be easy, and I think like allowing myself to take breaks from it is important. Like that's what I ended up doing towards the end of the year. I just sort of took a step back from it, focused my energy elsewhere, but it's still something that's really important to me. I think I also want to approach it maybe a little differently, maybe put myself out there a little more, get out of my comfort zone just a little and attend some singles events maybe.
Okay.
I don't
I'm going
know.
to ask you how you were going to do that. So that sounds like it would be fun.
Yeah, I think like in the past that's how I've enjoyed the experience the most is like when I've met somebody and we really hit it off and then we, go from there. But the dating app scene, it is what it is. I think I've learned some tricks of how I want to move forward with things. So if like I feel like there's a connection there, trying to meet up with that person fairly soon into making that first initial connection just to maybe like take the pressure off of
Mm.
like if you talk with somebody over text for a really long time, it could like build the anticipation a little too high. But, aside from romantic relationships, I also just want to try and make new friends. One of the things we talked about the other day was how hard it is to make friends as an adult for a myriad of reasons.
And it's
Um,
definitely going to be an upcoming podcast episode. So,
yes, yes. And in particular, recently I heard something that was a clip from an interview with Mel Robbins, which we'll share maybe when we do that episode. But it's just life's so different when you're an adult. But I think a lot of us tend to fall back on how easy it was to make friends as a kid. And so like it's not always, I certainly have not found it easy to make friends as an adult. So I want to try and do more of that this year. Meet new people, try new things, but also just knowing like we are adults and we have busy lives. So you have to like set the expectations a little differently
mhm.
than life was when you were in school or just around people your own age 24/7. And then one other like creative goal for myself that I've kind of came to rather recently was I really want to pick up piano again. And I'm not
Okay,
like, yeah, I'm not
cool.
like maybe ready to jump into doing lessons, but just like brushing up on my skills, getting a keyboard for my apartment and just like trying to practice again and find my way back to my love of singing because I might have mentioned last year I used to be a singer and I absolutely loved it and I really miss it. And I think a lot of who I am is wrapped up in the musician that I was at one time and I want to find her again. So, yeah.
She's not lost.
She's
She
not
just
lost. She's
hasn't
just
used her
been
voice
she
recently.
just has taken a little break.
Right. Kind of like
So
we
let's
did.
yeah, exactly. So I want to try and find her again. But yeah.
So any other big goals that you have for 2025, or even do you have any small goals for 2025 outside of what you've already mentioned?
So I definitely want to get my body moving again. Have found a buddy to sort of keep me accountable for working out, and so I'm gonna try and bring that back into my routine. I want to work up to 3 times a week, maybe do even more in the future, but just get my body moving because I feel so much clearer and I sleep better and like all these different things help if I just move my body.
Can I say how I love that you said I want to work my way up to 3 times a week and even more? Like, particularly on topic of this theme and like what we've already talked about, the pressure to hit New Year's and stay up with it, of going like the gym every day or like 5 times a week, and this is a really hard routine, or like that's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
the expectation I think around that kind of goal. I love that the way that you're talking about it seems like to me you're setting up a permanent habit and one
Yeah,
that's flexible with your life.
exactly. I think where things have kind of gone awry in the past is I feel like it has to be like an immediate switch,
Hmm.
but that's
I
just
get
not
that.
sustainable. So it's you got to like work towards it and each day do a little something to work towards what your end goal is. So that's definitely, I mean, like, I don't necessarily at the moment have any sort of big goals, but as just to your point of some little goals, just working out again, adding that back into my routine is definitely a little goal of mine that, week to week might look a little different. Let's see, what else? What else? What else? I every year set a reading goal for myself, which I was very happy to have met last year. So let's see if I can do that this year. I set a conservative number, I will say, because I know I will hit it. But I always sort of set like another goal that isn't maybe in writing because I track on Goodreads, so that's like how I visibly see my goal being met. So for 2025, I've set a goal of 25 books, but
I like
I
that.
see
25, 25.
yeah, exactly. Last year was 24. So this year's 25 and we'll see. I kind of want to see if I can maybe reach 50, but
Definitely.
we'll see. We'll see. It's something to work towards, but I know I have my immediate goal that I want to reach. I've already read 6 books so far this year, which is pretty big.
Wow. Check.
Uh-huh.
You're gonna hit that. Wow.
I
Yeah.
fingers crossed. I definitely in like a reading mode. Sometimes that comes and goes.
Yeah, I know that we had that conversation earlier this week where I've kind of hit a little bit of like you've read a lot and then you kind of hit that slump of like, "Ugh."
Yeah.
So I definitely get that. That's so cool though. And what a great way to
Thanks.
start the year. Like, wow,
Mhm.
you're like
Yeah.
hitting this hard.
So,
And it's something you love.
I do love it. I do love it. Yeah. I'm sure there's other things, but those are the things I want to touch on. So,
Okay.
what about you, my dear? What's the goals for this year?
Okay, so let me start with the continuations of last year. So, kind of like you started off with romance, so I'll do that. Romance and relationships. I have a note saying, like, this is back on the list. So, a mentor of mine had I was talking to her about some stuff, and she was like, well, spend more time doing the things that you like to do, like your hobbies and stuff. And I was like, okay, yeah, but some of my hobbies are like singular activities, like individual. But there's, as I'm sure there's ways I could incorporate doing this in a public place, somewhere where I'm more available, more open. So that is something I would like to invest in. Maybe, and particularly as I expand my circle of friends, as a conversation we'll have, like finding friends and finding friends that you don't happen to just fall into, but like making the choice to have those friendships,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe I'll meet somebody through them. Which brings me to my second point of how I'm going to do this a little bit differently this year is using my network of friends and people, letting them know that I am open and single and
Mm-hmm.
available. And if they know anyone, I'm happy to talk. Because I like that was a interesting experience that I had in 2024. It didn't really work out, but it kind of took some of the pressure of like dating, online dating. I
Mm-hmm.
might dig back into online dating. And funny enough, earlier today when I was on Instagram, I saw a snippet of a TED Talk. And unfortunately, I don't know who the speaker was. And maybe one of our listeners has heard it and can share with us on social media who it was. But she had talked about how she had approached online dating differently in the sense of she's like, I treated it like a sales funnel and, like who I was going to get to and like who, marketing wise, sales wise, who are you going to target? And like there's the top cone, like the middle one, and then the bottom one. It was like the first criteria was must use full sentences and complete grammar. Didn't look like it was copy and pasted between a bunch of people. And if they met that criteria, then they had to meet the second criteria, which was reference something in her profile. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And the third criteria, absolutely no like dick pics, no like overly sexual content, and then right out the gate. I was like, wow, that's some really good criteria to hit. That will filter out quite a lot, I think, out the get go. And to not treat it so much as a numbers game, as a just a, thing. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
that was sort of a disillusion I fell into last time I was really using a dating app, is just like, it felt so much like a numbers game. So maybe if I approach it differently, I'll treat it differently. It's a tool. It's a tool in which to meet people. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then she had, I really wish I knew who this speaker was, an idea of the zero date. So after the person met all three criteria, then it was time to get off the app and meet in person quickly. And this came up with the zero date. So she said it was one drink, 1 hour, no pressure. And if you like the person, then you could actually plan to go on a date. And she said she had done this with somebody and had done a zero date. She's like, within 3 minutes, I knew it was not going to be going anywhere. Which was
Mm-hmm.
great because then you weren't sitting through dinner with somebody or coffee, whatever it is. Like you're not sitting with
Sure.
somebody doing an event that you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to go nowhere. And she said that one of the next people she had done, that was a great guy. And it's like 2 or 3 years later at that point that she gave the talk. And, they have a washing machine and then some plants. I was like, I love that. So maybe trying that kind of mentality. And like you said, Christine, like getting off the apps, maybe like we can test out the zero date theory for ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's one that's back on the list. Health, a continuation of 2024, not a new goal, but again, a continuation as a mental cue to keep working on it. So still doing my work in therapy. And I will say one thing my therapist has said recently. She's like, I love that I have not heard you in about 6 or 8 months say that you've given up on everything, that you're just going to give up, that you keep going. And she's like, even if it's been a bad day, bad moment, you say like, wow, this is a bad moment, but you show up for yourself the next time, the next day. And that's great because, again, particularly when my eating disorder was at my strongest and I have an inclination to go, it's not working like that. That's not who I want to be in life. So I'm also looking at this as like, who do I want to be in life and how do I show up to be that person? And I don't want to give up on things that are genuinely matter to me. So continuing to work on my relationship with food, making sure that's balanced, exercise, moving my body. And I think that's a huge thing for me and something I want to make sure I'm continuing to check in on is like I'm not using exercise and the food as a balancing scale of like I can or can't. I'm trying to be no food is good or bad, no exercise is good or bad. I'm trying to be a lot softer in my approach, which has worked for me. That may not work for everyone. So everyone, if you have a different plan that works for you, do it. But like Christine said, like finding ways to move your body. I have a
Hmm.
coworker at work, and we pretty much walk most days that we can at work for 30 minutes at lunch, which helps. There's been some times where we can't. We have a couple friends who join us, and she has been making me walk in the cold. And I say making me, but we like it. It's certainly brisk. It makes you wake up for the afternoon. So that's really, it's great. And then if I get home and I don't feel like hopping on the bike or working out, then I go, hey, today I have moved my body. And that is what I intended to do.
Mm-hmm.
This year, exercise wise, I want to add a little more variety. I have mentioned before I have a Peloton and I'd like to make more use of all the content. So I actually, the past couple days, have tried some of their cardio dance, 10-minute cardio dance.
Ooh.
So I have an issue where I take not an issue. I tend to take myself very seriously and it's hard to like have some levity. So I'm trying to use that as levity. I'm like using a 10-minute dance cardio as a warm up before I hop on or do a different thing and really try to have fun and be silly and make mistakes. But it does
Mm-hmm.
certainly get your heart rate up. So kind of a two-pronged use of that. So I love that. But yeah,
Nice.
so do that. Some things I think I may have done last year, but I don't know. Business wise, I want to continue to show up at work and be the best version of myself during my day job. I'd like to put more energy into growing my other business, which has I think we've mentioned is in psychic services and reading. So I'd maybe like to expand my offerings, really grow my client roster, and take advantage of any opportunities to work on my business. And a couple things have already come up this year that I'm not quite ready to talk about on the podcast, but that I'm super excited for, and a few things that I'm waiting to hear on. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm trying to be softer, flexible with those. That if I don't make something happen right away, like Christine said earlier, I'm still trying. I'm still putting
Mm-hmm.
effort into it. It's a step. Continuing to approach my health holistically from the work I'm doing with the medical practitioners and alternative work. This year, I actually did already get my Reiki 3 certification, so I'm a master Reiki master. And so I'm going to continue to do Reiki on myself, maybe do some for my friends, kind of build that confidence and that practice on other people more than in 2024 I was able to do, and try to shoot for another similar amount of weight loss that I did in 2024. Consistent, reliable. But yeah, I think that's the health goals and finance. I think I mentioned it last year, but I didn't really put a whole lot of effort into. I really want to grow my financial literacy, investing, and maybe setting up myself a more conscious budget. We talked about our trip, which we had originally talked about going in the spring, and I'm kind of grateful that we're going to go in the fall. It gives me a little more time to plan and save. So I've had some unexpected car expenses that
Yes.
have been heavy hitting. So I'd like to really set myself up for success to save for a trip, but like Christine said, also some other long term goals, potentially a new car in the next year or two, because I love my car and I'm just hoping this is a crazy couple months. But travel is a thing, so we're definitely going to hit part of that. We've talked about maybe doing a trip up to Newport, Rhode Island. I'm going to see Christine again later this year. She's going to come down and maybe try and take some trips to cities I don't know so well in my own state. So I think that'll be fun. I've got some friends to explore that with here who also like adventures, which is similar to Christine. So sometimes I need friends to help push me outside my comfort zone. And I think that brings me to my last kind of goals, which are like friends and hobbies. So I want to spend more time with my friends. And one thing that Christine and I have done, we saw on Instagram people doing that Wednesday waffle, sending the videos. So I haven't
Mhm.
quite gotten to the videos as you guys will come to realize. Video part, not my forte. So the fact that we're doing this now also on YouTube, you get to see all the awkwardness and learning curve. But we have started sending each other voice memos back and forth.
Mhm.
And that has been such a fun way to stay connected because we do chat on the phone a lot and those will be like hour long conversations. But sometimes, like, it's nice to kind of just ramble on a voice memo in a way that's a little bit quicker than a text or easier to flow from one thing to the next thing. And it's just nice to get to hear a friend, particularly with long distance friendships. And with some friends I've made here, trying to plan that when I hang out, we plan our next hangout before we both leave or go our separate ways for the day. So I feel like that's a way to hold myself accountable of like investing time and energy into the relationships that I want to have. I would like to do
Absolutely.
some research, not some research, really put effort and research into writing a book. So that'll be fun. So I think I'll do some hit some of my reading goals with the research books, but we'll see more on that later. And lastly, kind of two okay, a few more things. Then I'll stop talking. I'm sure this has been a long episode for people, but clearing the clutter out of my lives, my life, clearing the clutter out of my life. And so, really, I mean by clearing the clutter out of my physical space. As Christine was when she was down here, she she helped me rearrange my bookshelf, which maybe I'll take a picture of at a later time, and we can share that. Because when moved into this place, I had just thrown everything up there, and I was like, I'll deal with it later. Well, later happened to be when my MBA finished. Because I just never got to it. And so when Christine was here, I was like, hey, how do you feel about helping me like make this look more functional, like nicer? And she was like, oh, styling a bookshelf. I love to do that. And I was like, okay, love the confidence, love the energy. And we took all the books and decks and everything I've got off and styled and cleaned the shelves. And when I was looking and cleaning the stuff, I was like, oh, I feel so accomplished. Then I turned around and then I was like, the panic set in. The entire floor was covered. Christine was sitting in the middle of it. And I think she saw my eyes going like, oh no, what have we done? But she really took the lead and helped me get it all back on the shelf because at some point I was like, I don't know, I don't care. It just needs to get off the floor. And she's like, okay, but I need you to actually make some decisions. And I was like, okay, this I used together, this here, yeah. So she was
Mhm.
so great. But to continue on that, I would like to like clear out some of my closet and really develop what kind of style clothing wise. So that's kind of a hopefully a smaller goal and something I'm not going to try and tackle all at once. Clearing out clutter and everything and even refreshing. I'd like to pick up bookbinding this year or book rebinding of books I like. That might be a little bit further out in the year, but that's something I got really interested in towards the end of 2024, seeing all the bookbinding videos on Instagram. And so I watched a lot of videos on how to do it, and I just need to
Yeah,
get some
they're
tools and
so
practice.
yeah, they're so satisfying to watch. They're
They are. They
so
are.
I'm very excited that you're gonna explore that.
It seems like the biggest expense for that to invest in is like a vinyl cutting machine
Mm,
and then getting a couple like thrifted books to just practice on because I've heard
practice.
that sometimes the first time ripping off a cover is a little nerve wracking.
What have I done?
Yeah, you're like,
I
oh
ruined
shit.
a book.
You're like, well, there's no going back now. So
Very
yeah, I
true.
think those are bookbinding, and then there's a couple like projects around the house that I'd like to maybe bigger projects I'd like to be creative and invest in and do.
Yeah, making
So
it your
yeah,
space. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Excellent.
functional but also pretty and more
Yeah.
bookshelves
Mm-hmm.
because I'm
Yes.
outgrowing this bookshelf already.
Well, we know that there's potential for you to take the back off
Yeah.
of your bookshelf because how it's situated in her room is it's basically separating her office from her bedroom. So taking the back will give you
More
essentially another
light.
bookshelf, more light, but like, you can display things on both sides.
Yes.
So it's kind of like another bookshelf.
It's kind of like another bookshelf. But I also still need more bookshelves.
Yes, yes, very true.
And I will say if anyone has friends that they want to stay in contact with it in a maybe long distance friendships or friends you don't get to see as often, we do really like the voice memos. It's also really fun because we read a lot, and so
Mm-hmm.
giving each other reading updates. She sent me a
Yes.
couple at way too late in the night
Way
for
too
me,
late.
and she's like, "I really hope you're not up right now, but like I just had to share my thoughts." And I was like, when I listened to it in the morning, I was like, I was definitely not. But it's a really fun way. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
this is
love
going to
it.
be a great year. And I love how, I think separately, we both kind of came to this of like, we were just dissatisfied with the whole New Year, New Me, New Year's resolution thing, the way it had
Yeah.
been done previously.
Mm-hmm.
Last comment, I swear. If you're jumping on the gym train, which absolutely rock on, have fun. I think the best advert I'd ever seen for a gym, I think it was on running around on social media, and it was a woman who was doing like had trouble opening a door. So then she was at the gym or whoever that gym was advertising for and like working on like rows and pulling. And so the next time she came to door, it was like she could pull it nicely or like
Mm.
picking up her groceries. So like working on bicep curls. And I thought
Yeah,
that was such a wonderful way for a gym to advertise and also maybe to encourage
absolutely.
people because it's not so it ties it back to something very practical. It's
Mm-hmm.
not just to get
I
the gym to get fit or whatever your goals are.
right.
It's
Yeah.
to be able to do life and move through
Right.
life with
Exactly.
strength without hurting yourself and loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is great.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes that gets lost with
Yeah.
so that's awesome. Good on that gym, where whoever it was.
I don't if I ever run across it again, I'll have to send it to you, but I thought I was
Yeah,
like, this is
please.
great. Love the
Yeah,
idea.
that is great. I love that. That's true. It's like you relating it back to something practical, I think makes it more approachable. So yeah, awesome.
And it
Well,
gives it people a tangible reason to do it, you know?
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been so fun. I've really even enjoyed this one. This conversation's been a lot of fun. But don't be too heartbroken. It is a wrap on this one, guys. We hope our reflections on 2024 and our goals for 2025 have sparked some inspiration, or at least a reminder that it's okay to take things one step at a time. Progress doesn't have to be perfect, and neither do you. I certainly am not. Thank you for joining us, and remember, every day is an opportunity to grow, not a deadline to transform. We're so excited for what's ahead this year, and we can't wait to hear what's on the horizon for you. Until next time, keep reflecting, keep growing, and we'll see you very soon. Bye, guys!
Bye.
Are you enjoying the banter and insights we're serving up? If so, consider tossing some support our way through our Buy Us a Coffee page. Every bit helps in fueling this passion project of ours. Find the link in our show notes or visit our link tree. We're immensely grateful for your generosity. As we wrap up, remember to hit that like, subscribe, or follow button on your preferred platform. Until next time, let's keep the conversation going. We'll catch you on the next episode.